Hi there. I'm so happy you're here. Here's what you'll gain by listening to the very last second of this conversation with Denise Golden Dubois. In this episode, Denise and I discuss her three student protocol. It's a powerful planning and reflection tool she's created, and it will help you as a teacher humanize your practice by focusing deeply on three specific students. It ultimately, I think, will help you also improve instruction for all of your learners. You'll also learn how to track observable facts rather than inferences about your students, and that will inform your instructional planning and decision making. Denise also shares how you can make your planning more concrete and actionable, and you can use her protocol for multiple contexts beyond individual classroom planning. Stay with us. I'm so excited to have you join our conversation. This is Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that offers educators and caregivers strategies to try right away and ensure every student receives the inspiration and support they need to thrive. I am Olivia Waugh, and I am so happy to have Denise Golden Dubois with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about Denise. Denise has been a public school educator for over 25 years. She has taught middle school and high school mathematics in Colorado, Texas, Maryland, and Guinea, West Africa. For the last 15 years, Denise has been an instructional coach all over the country. Denise, I reached out to you today, or I reached out to you a while ago, and I'm lucky because our paths crossed working in the same school district. I think you are brilliant. And the reason I love you a little extra is because you are so witty and captivating that I could sit in your professional learning sessions for hours and not even know I'm learning because I'm just with you in every moment. Um, One of my favorite pieces that I took from a first session with you was around your three student protocol. And so I asked that you come and share this with listeners because I think it's profound and I think it's a game changer. Um, Before we jump in, what's some research or a researcher that you're leaning on lately?
One of my favorite is Julia Aguirre, and I was able to be in a conference session with her in Colorado a few years ago. And she does a ton of work around identity building in mathematics and the importance of that, which has really been kind of the groundwork for most of the work that I've been doing in the last several years. As a result of that, we got to do a really fun problem with her in a big group, and I've actually used it several times with teachers kind of all over the place. It's just different ways to think about how mathematics is used, but also how we bring of ourselves to our mathematics experiences. So that work has been amazing. She's at University of Washington in Tacoma. And I just realized I was out in Tacoma last spring and I completely forgot to like go try to find her. I'm sure it would have been cocky, but still, I should have done that. I didn't even think about it. So she's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, and so let's talk your three student protocol because sitting in a room filled with middle and high school mathematics teachers, I'm coming with more of a literacy based lens, but the coaching lens of how focusing in on three children that we are serving can actually have this incredible ripple effect to all of the kids that we're serving. So, first, I'd love for you to explain what is the three student protocol.
Sure. So one thing I think about really with everyone, but particularly with mathematics teachers, just because I'm a mathematics teacher, is this need to plan, but that sometimes in mathematics, people don't really see that need. They aren't like, what do I really need to do to plan? I'm just going to work problems. They're going to work problems together. So I think of this idea of planning with students in mind and literally having students in mind. So when we are too broad brush generalizing, we really are kind of planning for no. In my mind, if you're trying to plan for 30, you're really planning for none. So it was stepping back. I had an experience where I had an opportunity to kind of think a little bit more deeply about specific students. And I kind of honed that down to this idea of three students. And so I try to break it into three sections. So the first one is I pick three kiddos in my class. And when I'm working with teachers, I generally want them to use just kind of pick one class because as you're planning, it's a little bit easier if you just have one class in mind. If you happen to have all the same prep, probably would be okay to flip across class, but really trying to think about just that one class. And I think about one student who I'm worried about for whatever reason, like I'm worried
Okay.
about them really doing all the learning I want. One student that I feel like, oh yeah, things seems to be working. What we're doing seems to be working. And then one student that maybe I'm thinking about could use a push. There's more that could be there that I'm missing out on. If I gave them an opportunity, maybe more could happen. I'm very specific about not talking about high, medium, and low kids. I
Yeah.
think that's not a descriptor of a child. Um, and I also really want this idea of I see their little faces, like, when I'm doing this. So, usually, teachers will, like, bring up their grade book and they'll be looking at kids, or they might bring up their seating chart because it just helps them really think and see
Oh, I
who
like
these
that.
kids are. So, the first step is, what do I already know about them? And this has been some work over time of it's not about inferring. So, words like lazy, we don't know if a kid is lazy. I don't have any idea that they're lazy. I might know they don't turn in their homework. That's just a fact, right? It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
judgment. So I'm not trying to infer anything at all. So I'm just listing things that I happen to know about that kid. So I have my three students that I use with teachers, Angel, Julio, and Joanna. So my Angel, I knew she was a repeater. I knew that her mom advocated for her. The first time I wrote it, I said her mom cares. And again, like, well, I don't know if she cares, but I do know that she advocates. She calls me, she lets me know, hey, here's what's going on with Angel. So it's really been something to try to not do that, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to make any kind of a judgment at all. Um, the only place I allow the inference is the very last kind of bullet of how do you think that this student sees themselves as a mathematical thinker?
Oh, okay.
And I can't know that for sure, but here's my gut that what I think is going on. Like, I don't think Angel really sees herself as a mathematical thinker. Mike Julio, who's my kid who thinks seems to be working. He's super active in school. He cares about his grades. Well, that's what I first said is he cares about his grades, but does he? I don't, he checks his grades all the time. So that's the truth. He checks his grades all the
Yes.
time. For him, I would say that I think he sees himself as a student more than as a thinker. So it's about the act of being a student, not necessarily the act of kind of going deeply into the mathematics. And then my Joanna, who's the kid who helps others. At first, I said she likes to help others again. I don't know if she likes it, but she does it all the time.
Got
And
it.
I do think she really viewed herself as a mathematical thinker. So I try to have teachers really think about their students. And so the first thing is just kind of silence in the room, and everybody's kind of writing these lists down. And it's super cool to kind of feel that energy as they're doing that. But I will say, I've a few times had teachers that didn't really have anything to write.
Yeah.
They had like two bullets. And so I try to do this early in the year. And I actually will often do this with schools early in the year. And then teachers will use these three students for their slow goals, for their evaluations and everything to really hone in. But what I tell them is like, it's not too late. If you notice, I don't know enough about these kids. Well, that's a great thing to know. So get out there and figure it out. Like, how are you going to find out more about them? So that's kind of the first step is just here's what I know.
Okay.
Then I like to do some kind of thinking activity with teachers just because it's helpful to be looking at a task and doing something just as a thinker yourself.
Yes.
But once we've done that, then our next level is okay, so when Angel gets this task in front of her, what's she going to do? So then the next step is what do I know about the student move? What will these three kids do when this task comes in front of them? And that, again, we're kind of listing it out. After this, I often have the teachers then turn and talk and just introduce your students to each other and talk about this, like what they're going to do. So another cool thing that I've seen done, and I think it can be real powerful, is for PLT, for those professional learning teams, to just use these three students as your conversation center. So like, I'm going to bring student work from these three. I'm not going to bring 100 pieces of student work because then
That
I bring
makes so much
work
sense.
aside and I say, here's my student work. And now let's talk about stuff, right? Like, so I'm not really doing anything with it. So now all of a sudden I know your Angel. I'm like, how is Angel doing? You were telling me she was taking that assessment. How did it go? Like, I'm starting to be kind of a co-owner of the learning of that kiddo. So that's been super cool. And then the last step, so you have, here's what I know. Then the second step is what will they do? What's the student move? And then the last step is then what's my teacher move? So if I know they're going to do those things, I already know it. They're going to ask for a pencil. How am I going to prepare myself for that? Like, what's my teacher move?
Got it.
And so I have, these various lists of kind of a sample that I always run through with my students. But a few of the comments that have come up, I had one teacher who said, this is so great. I don't have to be annoyed with them. Because I know they're doing it. Why do I get annoyed every time? I literally know they're going to do it.
Yes.
It's not a
Yes.
surprise. So
Yes.
how can I like, what's my move kind of in advance? So that's been super cool. And then I had one teacher who said he put his 3 students, he made sure they sat in different parts of the room because then he would look at them like they didn't know that they were listed on there,
Right.
but he
Right.
would paying attention. He's like, and then I knew that I was really looking around at each person. And so that was super cool as well, just making sure that you're being mindful of that. And then, I had a student like my angel, truthfully, like she had a B by the second semester and she didn't need to be my angel anymore. I put Tyler on there. Tyler really still needed something.
Ah,
So it's
yes.
not like I have to be like I've had teachers that, well, what if somebody moves? Well, just pick somebody else. It's fine. It's like
Right.
not set in stone, right? This is for you to do your thinking. So as I'm planning, then I am asking myself, will this work for Angel? Will it work for Julio? Will it work for Ioano? Because if I say no, it won't work, then why am I going to do that? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. So like, what am I going to need to do so that it does work? So is there going to be a scaffold or is there going to be like something I think about, when I hand out first thinkings, like I will end at Angel. I will lay it by her desk and I will stay standing there to make sure she gets started because I just
Got
know
it.
that she won't. So that's kind of the premise of where that 3 student protocol comes from.
So I want to just pause because you just gave numerous strategies. And my favorite thing about the 3 student protocol is the way it really humanizes our work. And so you offered also all different ways that this supports teachers and coaches in their planning work to make sure it's always grounded in student lenses. So that idea of I adore using those 3 kids as your PLT or PLC conversations even, right? And so, that idea of, I know your kids, you know my kids. How are they growing? How are they nurturing? So that conversation is centered. It also felt like a big relief to me because I see teachers bringing piles of student work. It's awesome. They're gathering student work. Good job. And let's look at it in a really systemic way. So, the other piece I just heard you mention is that idea of planning, because too many school districts are just slogging through the day by day. This lesson is what I'm told to do. This is really flipping that on its head. And so you have curricula, you have standards that you need to teach. But how then are you parsing out, like, here's how I know these 3 kids may navigate this task? How are you choosing your whole class instruction then, and then what you're tackling in maybe invitational minis?
So I think one of the biggest pieces is when you think through. So I also know that it can't be so cumbersome that I'm not going to be able to manage it, right? So I
Yeah.
can't just think like I'm going to write down all of these things about each of these kids every lesson.
Okay.
Like I don't need that. I don't need to do that every time. I know who these kids are, and if I don't, again, find out. Right now's the time. So like, if I know I want to be able to answer the question, what do I know about them as a mathematical thinker? Then I need to give them opportunities to be mathematical thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Like if
True.
I'm not, then I'm not going to be able to know that. So when I think about those, just that quick questioning of like, oh, you know what, Angel is going to not like this question is not open enough. That's what I'll think. This task is too closed. If it is like, give me the answer, well, she doesn't know what to do to get the answer necessarily. So she just won't. I know this about her. She'll ask to go to the bathroom. She'll be looking at her backpack or whatever. So I'm going to make sure like, oh, well, can I open up that question? Can I start out with a notice and wonder on this instead of going straight to the solving? Can that be once you've thought about it for a minute? Now I'm going to talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
So when I think about, so I have these 5 promises of math class that I work on with teachers, which is for another episode. But that idea of a first thinking, like how am I going to make sure every kid has had a chance? The importance of first thinking for an angel is I need to allow my brain to have an idea or I'm just going to go along with the group. Like I'm not even knowing I'm doing that, right? I think I'm participating. I'm like, oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree with what Libby said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you? Do you know what Libby said? Because you didn't think about it on your own. So the importance of that, why that matters to an angel, that piece is how it helps me know. So those idea of an invitational mini, here's where sometimes people get a little bit caught. Like, well, what if Angel doesn't need it and somebody else does? It's like, again, that's okay. But I'm using kind of Angel in my mind as a human person to think about how she's going to be dealing with this. And so, what if there is a struggle? What might she need? It might turn out she doesn't have a struggle, but someone else might have that struggle I was already thinking about for Angel. So, I'm allowed to kind of broaden the idea. And I wouldn't even call it generalizing because it's not, it's specific. It's actually more specific. I'm thinking about an actual person.
Right.
I'm not thinking about all the people. But it allows me to kind of broaden then my thought on like who else might benefit from this experience. So,
Yeah.
and then I go to the Joanna where, she'll do what I ask, but she would be willing to do more. It's like, how do I offer up that opportunity in a way that's manageable, meaningful for both her and me? So I feel like also kind of a piece of that planning. Does that make sense? Does that
It
kind of,
does. It does. And because when I'm listening, I'm thinking if I were a teacher in in my own classroom, then I would have those 3 students in mind with that specificity. And yet it does help me think of other kids that I'm concerned about because I'm tailoring and I have a backup plan for concerns, not specifically what that child may need, but just the bigger brush strokes. I have to share with you, sitting in that session, I try to make every professional learning impactful for my own practice.
sure.
And so I know I am not coaching and jumping into a math classroom right away. But I also know I'm coaching coaches. So when you asked us to think of 3 students, I thought of 3 coaches that I'm serving. And I did that exact same piece and layer. And it was extraordinarily helpful for me because then I'm thinking of the coaching task. What's the work? What are the typical barriers for that person? And so I'm living that protocol. So I just want to give a shout out because this work, it's parallel practice 101. It's a way of thinking and grounding everything we do with that human connection.
I was working with coordinators in a building, so like kind of a larger middle school. And we did the same thing as each of the content coordinators thinking about the teachers in their department
Yes.
and how they can. And it's important to have this kind of safe space to be having these conversations when it's about adults.
Yes, true.
I mean, it is true also about students, and this is why I really push this idea of like, I'm not inferring things. I'm not using pejorative terminology. I'm just saying, here's what I see. Here's what I see happen. It's not about what's good or bad. And that is work for teachers to move away from, they're not motivated. Well, you don't know if they're motivated. Like, that's not a term that you could use there. So, what do you know? They don't participate in their group. Okay. So then that makes me wonder, well, what is it?
Why?
Is it a boring task that I'm asking them to do? Like it allows me to put myself in there. And I think that can be really important. But one cool thing, and this is kind of newer because I, in the last few years, was working in a building as a teacher coach as well. So I was doing my own evaluations and then I had brought this 3 student protocol to the staff.
Okay.
And so I had asked the principal about using those 3 students in this, the slow goals, whatever goals people use for their evals.
Right.
And I was like, can I, instead of writing data that says, 22% of students got up this and, these giant, like they have charts and graphs that are not meaningful to the teachers. Can we just talk about these 3 kids? So then these administrators started, like when you would have a post eval and a pre eval, they would ask about the 3 students, like,
It's
tell me who
awesome.
they are. Tell me what's going on with them. How's that going? And then the write up was this narrative, personal. Here's what I saw happen. I was working on, with Angel, I tried this, totally didn't work. So then I tried this, or it really worked, or whatever. But it became much more meaningful for the teachers write it, like when they were writing it up. And it was interesting talking to them because they're like, I've always made these huge charts, which I could give one rip about, but they seem to like them. So I do
Yeah.
them any. But so like, I really just talk about students. I'm like, well, they told me that I could, so try it. And it has been really powerful. Again, it takes that humanizing into all these different layers. So like
Yeah.
with your evaluator, with your coach, with your department. So then sitting down at a department meeting, let's take the first 5 minutes, pull up one of your kiddos, talk about how it's going. maybe
Yeah.
with a different grade level or whatever. So it's been something that has been able to kind of go across. And I do this with the whole staff. So it's not only my specific kind of deep dive work is with mathematics, but I've certainly worked with teachers in every content that can also really think through this, electives, all of it. Like, it's been really fun conversations. And the buzz, when you have the teachers turn and talk and start talking about their kids, it's the coolest because you realize that that's what's so cool about teaching, right? Is
Yeah.
like the
The
actual.
kids.
So when they get excited to talk about, here's a kid, or sad, like, I'm not reaching this kid, like, I need help, I don't know what to do. But you just feel that energy of even humanizing them, right? A
Yeah.
humanized teacher as they're really trying to make these connections. So that has been really cool.
And we're going to wrap, but with that said, I think the other piece that's so powerful about this is the idea that you have so much research that has your back. And the most important piece is the tending, because this is such a way of tending to each of our learners. So I could see, yes, in the pre and post evals, honing in on these three children. But if I, as a teacher, can close my eyes and picture all of the kids in my class in this asset-based way of thinking. And, I heard you because I struggle with this. Each time you sometimes started with an inference, but then you bounce it back and say no. So I think that there's not one right way to go about it, but it's that awareness of how we speak of children. And so it's the pausing, not making assumptions, and then flipping it if we do. And that takes a lot of vulnerability and humility. So that's why I love this. I think teaching, we have to be really humble and reflective. And that's what this is all about. So I appreciate that. Who's an educator that is inspiring you lately in your travels?
Um, I'm just when I think about when I made my biggest change as a teacher, it's just still always kind of holds, and it is. I feel like it's just knowing you and the work that we've done together.
Yeah.
But the first time I was in Christovani's classroom,
Mm.
it was the first time I saw that there was really a different way
Yeah.
to be in a classroom. And so over the years, building that, um, it's because the curiosity as a teacher, like, what I should be most excited about is to find out what kids are thinking.
Yeah.
It's not about what I'm doing, but it's about what kids are thinking. And that was really kind of, so many years ago now, but an impetus to where I've landed now with three student protocol, with five promises, the things that, like, how to help teachers get to that place of knowing that it's not about me at the front of the room. I can't differentiate from there. I can't,
It's so
like,
true.
only when I'm out with students, I can't know them well enough to create a three student protocol from the front of the room. Like, I has to get out with them. And so I've seen many teachers over the years who've, like, grown into that, and that's been amazing. But if you don't see it, it's hard to get it. And I think that made it just was such a huge impact that now I've been able to then see from other teachers, like, okay, I see where that's happening for them as well. So I'm really going way back to when I first ever worked with Chris. And just, shout out to her as always. So,
Always. Well, you lift me up in that same way of just showing there's so many ways to do this work that it's grounded in kids. And that's why I enjoy every time I get to be with you, Denise. So
thank you
um, thank
much.
you. I am so excited to have listeners learn about the three student protocol and all of the layers and the way it benefits kids and teachers. So thank you for taking the time to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Take care, friend.
Bye.
Bye. Solutions, Coaching and Teaching Strategies is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Solutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Thank you to my guest, Denise Golden Dubois, for sharing how we can humanize our practice by focusing deeply on three specific students to improve instruction for all learners. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at solutionspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know how your school or district is tracking observable facts, not inferences, that inform instructional planning and decision-making. I'd also be interested to hear how you're meeting with other educators beyond your individual classroom planning. Tune in every Monday for the best research-backed coaching and teaching strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. Don't forget to stay tuned for my bonus episodes every Friday, where I'll share how I applied what I learned from the guests in schools that week. See you then.